10 for 10 for the week ending November 22, 2025. A quick 10-minute wrap-up of the week's compliance news. Well, this is the podcast for you, 10 for 10, where Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, wraps up 10 top compliance stories which occurred over the past week. If you don't know, Tom has a daily news podcast, appropriately called the Daily Compliance News, and 10 for 10 wraps up the week. So get up on a Saturday morning, have a great cup of coffee, and check out 10 for 10, the podcast which gives you the week's top compliance news. Are you interested in upping your game in compliance through the use of AI and machine learning technology? Well, check out my latest book, Upping Your Game, How Compliance and Risk Management Move to 2030 and Beyond. You can check it out in the show notes. I've got a link to the purchase at Amazon.com. Upping Your Game. First story today is about Jeffrey Epstein and what he has done to Larry Summers, or more importantly, what did Larry Summers do with Jeffrey Epstein? Because after the release of emails showing the deep friendship and communications between Epstein and Summers, Summers has had to resign from his board position at OpenAI, and now he's been suspended by Harvard, and he's a former president of Harvard. So who are you? Are you the friends you keep? Well, apparently for Larry Summers, that's not been a good thing based upon his friendship, apparently, with Jeffrey Epstein. So watch out who your friends are. It reflects on you. Next up, you ever wondered about the invidiousness of corruption? Well, the IMF predicts that if Pakistan could tackle its corruption successfully and governance failures, it could increase its GDP by 5 to 6.5% over 5 years. So that's how much it's costing Pakistan. The invidious corruption built into the Pakistani system is costing the country literally billions in growth. So if you've ever wondered what it would cost, the IMF has now told us. Next up, this next story may not appear compliance related, but I really think it is, and it's from the New York Times. And it reports that Mexico is not just the top supplier to the U.S., but now it's top buyer. Why is this so significant to compliance? Well, obviously the designation of drug cartels to foreign terrorist organization brings up an entirely new level of scrutiny for businesses companies doing business in Mexico. It's not just companies in Texas, Arizona, and California, or other companies in states near the border, but this is now our biggest trading partner on both sides of the equation, buy and sell. Who are you doing business with? Where are they banking? Who are the investors you have? Who are the investors they have? Who are you using as lawyers? Are any of these people shell companies for drug cartels or in any way associated with cartels? What about the bank? Does it have any dirty money? If any of those are true, you may be 110% liable under the FTO, or Foreign Terrorist Organization's designation by the Trump administration. You're going to have to significantly increase your due diligence. You're going to have to significantly increase your review of who your partners are going forward. Next up, from Politico, right-wing lawmakers have sued the EU Parliament over a blocked corruption inquiry. One of EU's top courts is being asked to examine whether the European Parliament breached its legal obligations by denying lawmakers the chance to investigate the bloc's handling of vaccine contracts. The General Court received a motion prepared by MEPs, or that's members of the European Parliament from right-wing parties, that argues the groups or the Parliament's failure not to have a vote was unlawful. So guess what? Right-wingers actually see advantage to the legislative process. Our next story comes to us from Reuters, which reports a dispiriting story that the Trump administration is close to implementing a rule that would end longstanding protections for whistleblowers among federal employees. The rule would allow Trump to fire employees based upon blowing the whistle. Yep, you heard that right. A right established in law in Sarbanes-Oxley for now 25 years. The Trump administration wants to get rid of it for federal employees. Why? They don't want anybody reporting anything. Our next story comes to us from Bloomberg, which reports that the French police have raided the French offices of the Portuguese company Altice in a wide-ranging corruption case involving the company's owner, Patrick Drahi. Searches took place at 15 homes and 14 companies in France and other locations, and the police recovered and seized evidence, including assets as well, vehicles, luxury items, and more than 14 million euros for bank accounts. Since 2023, French authorities have been investigating a vast corruption scheme involving private corruption, organized fraud, and money laundering to the detriment of Altice. Next up from the New York Times, the fraud case against Gautam Adani, the Indian multi-billionaire, is in limbo. He, of course, has personal ties to the Indian Prime Minister, and a suit was filed in December by the Biden Department of Justice, but since then there's been nothing to show. He has been trying to get out of the indictment. No doubt he hasn't made a big enough campaign contribution to the Trump campaign yet, but his case is still in limbo and nothing has been happening. Next up, you know, it's bad when Newsweek reports on corruption. Yes, Newsweek. And they report on the Trump's pardon for the Binance CEO CZ was corruption, according to a former DOJ pardon attorney. Trump's use of his executive clemency has drawn criticism from the former U.S. pardon attorney and renewed questions over political influence by the administration over the Department of Justice. I think that question has been answered, that the White House controls the Department of Justice and they either put out a Truth Social post or simply pull the string of Pam Bondi. But this case really illustrates the corruption which has infected every part of the Trump administration and how, with simply enough money, you're going to get a pardon. So the CZ pardon was for someone who was criminally convicted, agreed to a criminal conviction. The company was fined $4 billion for money laundering, but all of that got wiped out by the Trump administration. Next, how do you turn compliance into a competitive advantage? Well, apparently in the defense industry, you can do so. And if you have an effective compliance program and if you operate compliance at the speed of business, the Department of Defense wants to talk to you. Why? Because they want to do business with people who are in compliance, but they want people who will innovate. Well, think about that argument you can make to your board of directors. We want to be the company that the government wants to do business with, and the government wants to do business with companies that are in legal compliance and do business ethically. Why? Because there's a good chance they'll be around at the end of the day and at the end of the contract and when the next contract comes up. So even though the administration seems to favor fraud and doing business with corporate insiders, that doesn't benefit the government. And here we have a great example of why compliance can and is a competitive advantage. Our final story comes to us from the Financial Times. And rather amazingly, the Swiss banking giant UBS is considering a move to the United States for its corporate headquarters. Can you believe that? Well, you probably shouldn't believe it. Nevertheless, there were discussions held between UBS and the Treasury Secretary because the Swiss are putting increased reserve requirements on UBS, which UBS says they can't meet. So they really want to come to the United States? Think about that for a minute. That's how bad it may be. Now, I don't believe for a minute this will happen, but it's certainly a warning balloon to Swiss authorities from UBS. We're going to be off the week of Thanksgiving, so we'll see you the first week in December. This is Tom Fox again. 10 for 10 is a special production of the Compliance Podcast Network. I'd also urge you to check out the Daily Compliance News, which posts every week from Monday to Friday, where I give 4 curated stories of bribery, corruption, and compliance events that will allow you to help you start your day as well. So check out the Daily Compliance News and subscribe or rate and review to both 10 for 10 and the Daily Compliance News. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of 10 for 10. I hope you'll check out the newest podcast in the Compliance Podcast Network, the Compliance Tip of the Day. In Compliance Tip of the Day, I give a 5 to 8 minute summary of one tip that you can integrate into your compliance program or put together for greater compliance program efficiency. Finally, if you're a Sherlock Holmes fan, I am preparing a new season of Adventures in Compliance where I go through the 4 novels of Sherlock Holmes. Hear it on the Compliance Podcast Network.